or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hailie and today I am doing my January reading wrap up. So throughout the month of January, I read 12 books and today I am going to tell you guys all of my thoughts about each and every one of them. I did a few reading vlogs this past month, so a few of these books that I'm going to talk about today I have talked about extensively in those reading vlogs, so I will have that link down below, but of course I'm going to wrap everything up today. So I'm going in with no particular order. I'm going to start off with this one. This is Read Between the Lines by Rachel Lacey. To be honest, I haven't read a ton of romance books about two women, so I really enjoyed this one. This book was such a fun read because these two women ended up connecting online and they were both going by different identities, but in real life they'd already met each other and they weren't the biggest fans of one another. So when they do make that connection in the book, it is so awkward, so uncomfortable because they both had romantic feelings for their online crush, but the real life version, they were like, how are we going to get over this? At times this book was a little bit frustrating, mainly with the main character Rosie. She just put so much blame onto Jane throughout this book, and I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything, so I won't go too in depth here, but it wasn't Jane's fault. She was so hard on her throughout this book, and I do like how things wrapped up and the ending of this book, and the characters throughout are all just so fun and sweet. Overall, this was just a really enjoyable read. It honestly put me in such a good mood, and I really loved it. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up, Funny You Should Ask by Elisa Sussman. When I had originally picked this book up like months and months ago, I picked it up because the cover is very cute, and then it just sat on my shelf forever. But this book was not at all what I anticipated it to be, and when I posted how much I loved this book, I got so many replies that were like, I hated that book. So I guess it's not for everyone, but I really enjoyed this one. It is in alternating timelines, past and present. The main characters, one is a journalist, the other one is a celebrity, and she's doing a profile on him. So you'll get chunks of the profile article, and then the next chapter will be what really went down. And then throughout this book, there's also like other random, honestly they are very random, they don't really connect to what's going on in the chapters, but different articles just kind of like strewn throughout, and I thought that was really cool, a nice little touch. Most of the complaints that I saw about this book was about those. They were like, that was so unnecessary, why were those there? So I guess it just depends on what you like. I thought this one was really fun. I really did love these two characters. There were some things, like there's definitely this insta love, and guy was like her celebrity crush, so she already had that going into it, but they definitely like, it hit it off right away. Like there is this connection of sorts, but at times you don't really understand why or how this connection was so deeply formed. So that was my only real complaint with this book, but I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. Next up, I have New Animal by Ella Baxter, and this was such an interesting read. It is like a very short story. This is only 184 pages, so definitely easy to get through. I read it in a single evening. I thought this book was very interesting. There is like some dark comedy in here that I really enjoyed, but basically the main character, she is a makeup artist at the morgue. Her family owns like a funeral home business, and they all work in different parts of this funeral home, and that in itself was very interesting to me. One of the lines that I had tabbed in this book is, "The deceased are beyond beautiful, but only because they are so empty to worry. Everything tense or unlikable is gone. Like a shopping center in the middle of the night, they have lost all the chaos and clatter." So throughout this book, there are like a few little graphic pieces in here. Death is something that I'm obviously very uncomfortable with, but reading this book and seeing like the point of view of someone who works around death every single day, I thought that was very interesting. I thought it was just like a really cool perspective. There's actually a lot of great lines in here that I ended up tabbing, but basically her mother passes away in a totally random accident without warning, and she is trying to come to terms with her grief, and it sends her down a very strange path into the BDSM community, and there's like so much craziness that goes on throughout this book. Honestly, there are just so many different emotions throughout reading this book. Definitely different than what I normally read, but I I liked it a lot. Next up, I have Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda, and I really love Megan Miranda's writing, but just right off the bat, this one did not do it for me. It was a little bit on the slower side. Honestly, it was just hard for me to keep up with all of the characters because this book is about like a tight-knit neighborhood. I wouldn't say the neighbors are all friends, but they're all friendly. They know of each other. They like keep an eye on each other. And so you have to keep track of all these different neighbors. But one of the neighbors was convicted of murder on two of the other neighbors. And the former roommate of the neighbor that was convicted is not quite convinced that she really did it. So throughout this book, you're kind of just connecting all of these different puzzle pieces. And one thing I really love about Megan Miranda's writing is that it just sends you all over the place. It has you leading one way and you're like, they did it. They did it, and then totally twist it around and you're like, wait a second, what is going on? So although this wasn't my favorite thriller nor my favorite Megan Miranda book, it was a good one. I did end up giving it 3 stars overall. Then I have X's and O's by Amy Leah, and I have not stopped talking about this book since I read it, and it's really perfect for February, so definitely check it out if you guys are into romance books. What I did not know before reading this book is that there was a previous book. It's kind of a series, but not. You don't need to read the first book before you read this book. It's like a spin-off of other characters, but the first book in the series is set on you, and I definitely want to check that one out. But like I said, you don't have to necessarily read it in order. The main character of this book is actually a bookfluencer, mostly like a bookstagram girly, although there are quite a few mentions of like book talk in here. She has been struggling in the dating scene, so she decides to go back through each one of her ex-boyfriends and see if she can rekindle something. She actually ends up roping her roommate into helping her out. Her roommate is like this hot firefighter. They got off to like a very rocky start when she moved in, but they quickly become best friends and maybe a little bit something more. The best way that I can describe this book is the 12 Dates of Christmas, but for Valentine's Day. If you read that book, that one is one of my favorites, and it was just like another version of it. So I definitely recommend this one. I loved it. Okay, some of the girlies were a little bit mad at me when I did my original review of this book, but I didn't like it. This is A Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas? I'm so sorry. A wedding in Spain, an infuriating man, 3 days to convince her family that she's actually in love. So this is a fake dating trope, but the main character is absolutely unbearable. She is the most annoying ever. There will be a single line of dialogue, and then like the next 3 pages is just like her inner dialogue, and it's so irritating. And the way that she just like hates this man, I don't feel like it came across warranted in the slightest. Like, I think this was supposed to give enemies to lovers, but it was just like whiny, irritating lady finally understands that this man has been in love with her forever. I really can't think of like any other book where I really hated the main character, but this, I hated her. Honestly, would not recommend. Next, I have Live Your Best Lie by Jessie Weaver, and this was such a fun one. If you enjoyed One of Us is Dead, I think that you would really enjoy this one. It's kind of like the same vibe. The main character is like a huge social media influencer, and one night at her big party, she winds up dead. Immediately, the suspects are her best friend, her boyfriend, her former roommate, and the girl that was obsessed with her and had like one of those Instagram closet pages for her. So each chapter is a different perspective, and I also like that you get like text messages. I always think those are such a fun touch in books, and also like her social media posts. What they find out throughout this book is that sometimes what you see on Instagram is not how things truly are, and I enjoyed this one. It was definitely fun. I feel like this is a little bit more geared towards like a younger audience. I still found it enjoyable, and I always love a little murder mystery. It's twisty, it's turny, and for being about a murder, it's like pretty lighthearted. Then I finally have Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, and this was the first book that I read this year, And I have to be honest, it feels like I read this book a lifetime ago. January was eternal. This is like a family reunion turns into mass murder scene. They're trapped on an island during a really bad storm, and it's like each one of them gets picked off one by one, and it's like, who is doing this? Everything in here is just so crazy and unexpected, and I had so much fun reading this one. And like I said, I had no idea what the heck was going to happen at the very end. I did not guess it. I was so off. It was a really clever read, and I really enjoyed each one of the different characters' personalities. So definitely recommend this one as well. Next up, I have Lock Every Door by Hailie Sager. And I actually just got a comment on my YouTube video that I say his name incorrectly. Sager. Is it Sager or Sager? So someone let me know. This was another twisty thriller. This one is about a girl who is very down on her luck. She needs a job immediately. She finds something about being an apartment sitter, and it turns out that it is like too good to be true. She gets $4 grand a month to stay at this apartment, and it's like one of the most well-known buildings in New York. Right across from Central Park, it is full of like rich or famous or both. There's so much secrecy around this building, and she takes the opportunity right away. She notices weird things start happening in this building, and when her other apartment sitter friend goes missing, she's determined to find out what the heck is going on in this building. But what happened at the end, I never could have anticipated or guessed. This had a little bit of the Paris Apartment sort of feel to it by Lucy Foley, and I really enjoyed that book as well. This was definitely a crazy one, and I would recommend checking this one out as well. So I finally read it. I have heard so many things about this book for so long, and finally got it. So this is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan, and I didn't know what to really expect going into this book, but when I tell you that it broke my little heart, I was bawling my eyes out at the ending. I feel like this is another one that is very YA, definitely best for someone in high school, maybe college age. But I enjoyed it because there were so many parallels from the main character to myself at her age. And a lot of this book kind of read like a diary. Everything was just very real feeling. The main character, Autumn, had been best friends with Finney since they were children. They grew up together, they were inseparable. But as most people do, once you get into high school, people kind of part ways, and she became part of like the outcast, whereas he became part of like the populars. So Autumn is trying to kind of navigate this weird new life that doesn't include Finney. She can't help but think like, what if he was with me? This was a cute book. It absolutely smashed my heart into pieces at the end, but I feel like it's a must read. Then I have A Tidy Ending by Joanna Cannon, and to be totally honest with you guys, I have no idea how to describe this book at all. I would describe this book as creepy and confusing. There are a bunch of murders going on, and it seems that the main character suspects her husband, but throughout this book there are just so many weird things going on, and the main character is extremely quirky and very weird and not self-aware in the slightest. So like the things that she says throughout this book and like her actions, they're very weird. They're very like suspicious, and even at the very end, I don't know what the hell is going on. The writing was like really deceptive. I don't know, it was interesting for sure, but not one of my favorites, and absolutely not what I expected. And the very last book, I actually just finished this one on the 31st, so really snuck it in there last minute. But I finally read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This was one that I have been wanting to read for so long, but I also did not know what to really expect going into it. I always love when there are like little things throughout books, like the text messages or email chains. This is a photocopy of a planner. Like, I love stuff throughout books like that. So this one was really fun. It felt like I was the one solving this murder mystery, and again, did not see the ending coming at all. I had my suspicions, but they were definitely incorrect. In this book, a high school girl goes missing, and a few days later her boyfriend commits suicide. So people are like, this is an open and closed case. The boyfriend killed her, then killed herself, but they never ended up finding this girl. So the main character of this book decides to kind of take a deeper look at this case because she is not convinced that the boyfriend was the true killer here. The reason that she even starts looking into this case is because she's doing a capstone project. So throughout this, you kind of like get her notes for her project and get to see all of like the interviews that she does, and it is really crazy. It takes you on a wild ride. There are so many suspects throughout this book, but it was really fun to read and really interesting to see what happened. But those are all of the books that I read throughout January. Overall, it was a really good reading month. Honestly, I had been going through a really bad reading slump the past few months, so getting through this many books throughout January was very exciting. Oh god. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon. Bye!